Part 56. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 552. I'm going to advance. The domineering nature of these 4 words shocked Aurora on the spot. What a pity, he is considered a little genius in Nevis. How long did it take to go from level 5 to level 6? More than a year? In this way, the teacher was very satisfied with his speed and thought that he worked very hard during this period and did not waste time. And how long did it take Gretel? It's only like half a year. After all, Gretel advanced to the 5th level mage at the end of last year, at the barbarian gathering, when the first winter snow fell. Moreover, they still have dual professions of magician and priest, and both of them need to be advanced. So is this the difference between a legendary disciple and a disciple of a legendary disciple? In a daze, Gretel rushed into the meditation room and slammed the door. Aurora came back to her senses and rushed forward to hammer on the door. Hey, today is Monday. Do you want me to ask for leave for you? The Lord of Thunder has a weekly meeting. Please. The door to the meditation room opened a crack and quickly closed again. With a click, the door is closed and locked, and the magic circle is activated to isolate the inside and outside. From this moment on, apart from the magician himself, there are only invisible servants under the control of the tower spirit who can deliver water and food on time. Of course, magicians who are in deep meditation and trying their best to attack the advancement threshold may not necessarily need it. Gretel doesn't need it either. He slumped down onto the mat and closed his eyes tightly. In an instant, the human figure of light in the core of meditation stood up in the field of vision, slowly rotating, and every detail appeared. Skeleton, muscle, blood vessels, heart, internal organs, lungs, liver, gallbladder, kidneys, pancreas. The respiratory system, from the trachea to the lungs, the digestive system, from the throat, esophagus to the rectum and anus. Nerves, brain. All the previous ones have been shaped during the previous few advancements. What is connected this time is the lymphatic and immune systems that were recently shaped with mental power. Spleen, thymus, tonsils, various lymph nodes, lymphatic vessels and lymphatic capillaries throughout the body. The further back you go, the more delicate and difficult the shaping becomes. Lymph nodes are small and scattered throughout the body. For every cancer surgery, cleaning the surrounding lymph nodes is quite a complicated task. Lymphatic capillaries are as dense and complex as capillaries, penetrating into every corner of human tissue. At the ends of limbs and around various organs, they often run together. And lymph fluid penetrates deeply into the gaps of every tissue in the human body, participating in the circulation of tissue fluid and blood. These details, Gretel is limited to the total amount of mental power, can only create a rough outline. For example, lymphatic capillaries, a single valve composed of a single layer of endothelial cells, he could only roughly think about, it should look like this. During the advancement process, the will of the world carries a huge amount of energy and powers down. Those pale, shadow-like details become more vivid bit by bit. Fill the details with energy. Connect, integrate, and communicate with the original system. Become a complete whole. Then, the meditation core composed of energy feeds back to the physical body, washing the corresponding organs and tissues. Cough cough, cough cough cough. Gretel couldn't help coughing hard. My tonsils were itching and I was spitting out thick phlegm. Speaking of which, when he was a child, probably in his previous life, his tonsils were often inflamed. At that time, he even considered whether to have them removed. So, as a result of the feedback from the lymphatic system to the body, my immunity is greatly enhanced. But it won't make me allergic too easily, right? This needs to be adjusted. He didn't want a spring breeze to blow by, sneeze, and suddenly his throat would become swollen. It's so miserable to struggle to do chi or something like that on yourself. Gretel quickly fell into deep meditation. The direction of strengthening immunity must not be too sensitive, but should be systematically strengthened through exercise. It's like upgrading from the level of a human to the level of a dwarf or a barbarian, or from the level of an ordinary human to the level of a knight. In short, even the disease that killed me yesterday will no longer pose a threat to me from today on. Others have to be sick in bed for many days, the most I can do is sneeze. Start being a hunk today. Go. The feedback from the worlds will comes in waves. Construct a meditation core, feed back to the physical body, fill the entire meditation environment, and construct spells. If Gretel is not mistaken, this time the priest level and the mage level have soared together. Develop smallpox vaccine, promote cowpox vaccination, analyze blood types, promote blood transfusion. It seems that the various works he has done since his last advancement and the progress he has brought to the world are enough to win the favor of the world. Does the will of the world prevent him from advancing? Greed thought silently, trying his best to expand his mental power and welcome the energy poured into him by the will of the world. It is not a big step to advance from level 5 to level 6. There is no other trick except Gretel, use energy. What he needs to decide now is which magic to add to his soul spell when he advances. Do you still need to think about it? It is definitely a blood test magic. Well, the most important thing is to leave enough margin for the spell interface. Fortunately, in the advanced state, the energy infusion is endless, and the thinking speed is also much faster. Greed cluttered and dismantled it, leaving 70 or 80 interfaces for this magic. Cell. Ion. Unusual pathogen. Protein. DNA. Regardless of whether it can be measured in the future, in short, all the test items that can be thought of are included. In the lingering aftermath of the energy infusion, Greed completed the last stroke of the spell model and jumped up. How about it? Did it succeed? As soon as the door was pushed open, there were a lot of people talking at the door, asking questions collectively. Gretel chuckled, raised his arms, and flashed his biceps. Of course it was successful. It was very successful. Let me tell you, after this advancement is completed, I will be steel iron bone from now on. Oh, is it so? 2 arms, one on the left and one on the right, came up at the same time and landed on his arms. One muscle knot, the forearm alone, was thicker than Greed's forearm, and it was covered with a layer of long, black hair. It was clearly the arm of Bernard the Barbarian. The other one was skinny in the literal sense, so thin that it really only had the ulna and radius bones, without even muscle or skin. It was golden and bright, and it was obvious at a glance that it was Lin's golden skull. The owner of the golden skeleton stood 5 or 6 steps away with his arms folded. Reinforced steel and iron bones. Can you choose one of these two and give it a try? Gretel. Increasing immunity does not mean increasing strength. That's to increase your physical fitness. Good physical fitness. The directions are different. He jumped back, first patted the space bag, and released his dark gold skeleton. The 2 skeletons walked toward each other, wrestling each other's arms. Soon, the dark gold skeleton's ulna was broken off by the gold skeleton. Lin N, let me tell you something, it is really a waste that Your Excellency the Immortal gave you the skeleton. You should let him go and move around freely. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. I only have 97 recommendation votes so far today. Crying loudly. I saw an author today who said, my friend brought back a mint stick as a side dish from his meal at the hotel, and it came alive once he put it in the water. Thinking about it, how about I stop growing potatoes and plant mint instead? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 553. Thank you all guests for coming. After more than a month of intense negotiations, we have reached a series of friendly agreements. Archmage Lebron held up a wine glass. It was half filled with a light golden liquid, and he didn't know if it was champagne. He threw himself a loudspeaker and spoke enthusiastically. At the venue, a small half of the people listened politely, and a large half of the people whispered to each other. Greet came out of seclusion just in time for the closing ceremony of this diplomatic conference. He can be said to have started well and ended well, and his reputation as a diplomat was not in vain. At this moment, he was blending in with the crowd and fulfilling his last duty. Although at this time Gretel was not with the vampires he was responsible for entertaining, but was surrounded by a group of dwarves, barbarians, and orcs, overwhelmed. Gretel, have you advanced? The stars on the badge have changed. Gavin stood on tiptoes and tried to look at Greet's chest. There, the 5 shining bronze stars on the mage's badge had turned into a silver star. Beside the badge, the 6 green leaves of the oak staff are facing each other and unfolding gracefully. Level 6 Magician, Level 6 Priest. You were still at level 4 when you left, so fast. In just over half a year, the bronze star has become a silver star. Yeah, so fast. A warrior squeezed over from the orc side, with huge gold rings dangling on his ears, which made people dizzy. Seeing Gretel's blank expression, he laughed and pointed to his chest. Master Mage, at that time I was stabbed in the heart with a knife. It was you who cut open my chest to save me. Do you remember? Oh, pericardial tamponade, the one who pressed the heart with bare hands while looking directly at me. After saying this, Greet remembered. It's you. Are you recovering well? Very good. The orc warrior waved his fist and jumped hard, trying his best to show off his strength. After I went back, I rested for half a year and successfully advanced. Open the chest widely and perform cardiac resuscitation with bare hand compression under direct vision. The prognosis is good and the progress will not be affected, Gretel silently recorded in his mind. Very good, there is one more case feedback. For such a rare case, if the journal is different, a paper can actually be published. It is a pity that there is no relevant journal. Hey, when will an alien version of the Lancet appear? Mage Nordmark, I heard that you have been studying blood testing magic recently. What are the results? Can our blood determine the bleeding type? This magic has only been tested on humans so far. Gretel sweated. His blood test magic is aimed at human blood types, and he can easily identify types A, B, AB and O with just one swipe, although in another world, he gave them new names for the convenience of dissemination. However, the blood type of the orcs. Lord Nordmark, why don't you give it a try? Elder Brock, wearing a feather crest and cloak and holding a bone staff, also squeezed over and stretched out a hand to him. Didn't you say before that if blood can be transfused in time, soldiers will recover their strength much faster? Give it a try. What if your magic can also determine our blood type? As he said this, he turned around and waved with his bone staff, and a group of barbarians gathered around him, each holding out a hand. The leader grabbed the carving knife on his belt and wiped it on the pad of the middle finger of his left hand, and blood immediately gushed out. Gretel. You stop. Stop. Just one drop is enough. No need to give yourself a knife so boldly. He quickly took out the test tube and took it. While taking it, he condensed a small ball of healing energy and pressed it on the other party's wound. Alas, isn't this looking for trouble? If you use a needle to collect blood, just press it with a cotton ball. After collecting the blood, I took a magic shot and it showed unable to analyze as expected. Greet concentrated slightly, feeling the feedback in the meditation field of vision. Sure enough, the results of the spell detection were different from the 4 blood types of humans. I might need a few more samples. There are plenty of samples. You can take a look at the people here. If it's still not enough, go to the city and shout for hundreds of them. Elder Brock waved boldly. Gretel followed his movements and looked forward. Each soldier raised a carving knife. It was called a knife, but the blade was actually 3 or 4 inches long, and placed it on his finger, staring at him eagerly. It doesn't have to be this way. Gretel sweated. Turning their heads to the side, the dwarves and barbarians all opened their eyes wide, as if they wanted to take this opportunity to quickly take a blood type test. This. Gretel, show us first. Mage Nordmark, let's take a look at our blood types first. In the hall below, Gretel was surrounded by foreign guests. They seemed to be chatting and laughing happily, and were extremely harmonious. Above, Archmage Lebron and several heads of foreign delegations raised their glasses and smiled at each other. These agreements on trade, free movement of people, and mutual guarantees of security and work rights are not the focus of this negotiation. Anyway, the agreement is about renewal, tinkering, and slight adjustments. Any subordinate can negotiate. But this time, taking advantage of the continuous attacks on the Glory Holy See, taking advantage of their pope and their high-ranking clergy, they all shrank and drastically reduced their external activities. After 1 or 2 months of arduous negotiations, everyone reached the most important results. At sea, intercept the fleet of the Glory Holy See returning from the New World and give them a heavy blow. Reach a consensus, determine the combat time, determine the combat deployment, determine the number of troops, ships, magic weapons, and high-level professionals of all parties, determine the cooperation methods and command authority, determine the sharing of combat costs and the sharing of spoils. Every point has to be discussed, every detail has to be negotiated repeatedly, and every agreement is accompanied by countless spitting, intrigues, tables being turned over, old scores being turned over, and the 18 generations of ancestors and descendants mocking and abusing each other. Generation. Coward. Coward. Idiot. Those ships you built are just big bathtubs. When sailing on the ocean, a huge wave can capsize them. It's better than sleeping in someone else's bathtub with a guy who won't show his head. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong. Paper, quills, and ink bottles were flying everywhere. Fortunately, dwarves, barbarians, and orcs have rough skin and thick flesh, and vampires and magicians have various magical barriers. After the smashing is done and the anger is gone, the apprentice-level cleaning technique can be used to restore the original state. Alas, talking about it brings tears. Fortunately, it was finally over, the talks were over, and everything was finalized. Tonight, everyone can enjoy the banquet without thinking about the hard work ahead. Ah! Far away, deep behind the banquet podium, a scream rang out from somewhere. Sharp, miserable, frightening, desperate. The joyful atmosphere in the entire hall was interrupted by this scream. Several alien leaders turned their heads to look. The Orc Prince had the strongest mobility. He jumped up and followed the sound. Not long after, he left and returned, pointing at the vampire Marquis Turgu with an angry look on his face. Bah! Our great orcs will never fight alongside you. Don't think about the previous agreement. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 554. What happened? A fight started? Someone was hurt, or was someone dead? Greet squeezed each other and moved forward quickly. After running a few steps, Cyrilla caught up from behind and gave him a lift by the elbow. Gretel immediately felt like he was flying in the clouds, and his whole body was floating. He was led by Cyrilla and kept his feet from touching the ground as he flew forward. Go through the corridor, cross the atrium, and go around the corner of the house. In the distance, several lighting techniques rose up, illuminating the men and women enjoying the joy beside the flowers and pools, and they dispersed in pairs. It seems that there are quite a lot of people looking for fun outside the banquet hall, so is this also looking for fun and overturning? Gretel hurriedly caught up with him. Under the light of the lighting technique, a group of big guys moved forward quickly with chaotic steps. The back of Marquis Turgo's tuxedo is flying, which is particularly eye-catching. What a bad ally! Turning our noble priest into a blood servant, we can't afford this kind of ally. From a distance, the Orc prince's scolding voice came over with great vigor. Priests are servants of the god of war. They are sacrosanct. Making them blood servants is an insult to the entire Orc race. It's not a blood servant, it's a descendant. Snapped. A bang. I don't know if it was a slap or a fist, or something else, but in short, a vampire flew out high, drew an arc, and landed squarely at Greet's feet. Greet lowered his head and looked. My dear, my jaw was twisted to the back. If your cervical vertebra is so crooked, you're dead, right? Then he saw the vampire put his hands on the ground, groaning, and pulled himself up. Her eyes were blurry, but she smiled when she saw him, as if he wasn't in any pain. Okay, the vampires have different physiques, and they may not really need saving after being beaten into such a bad shape. Gretel kept running forward, and heard chaos ahead. Go away. This is it, let me give her a good time. This was the roar of some Orc prince. Let's find a way to save her first. This is the low and gentle persuasion of Archmage Lebron. No. Your Highness. Let me save her. Save her. This was the desperate cry of some Orc warrior. I can take back the true blood, but if I take it back now, she will definitely die. This is the low-pitched explanation of Marquis Turgu. Go away. Orc priests would rather die than become a vampire. There was a lot of chattering, and the noise filled the sky. If the decibel level in the banquet hall is 60, then the decibel level here is estimated to exceed 90. Greet dragged Cyrilla, or was dragged by Cyrilla, and got into the crowd to take a look. He saw a red-haired girl lying on the ground, with more air coming out and less air coming in. Her eyes were half open and half closed, and she was about to know more. Another Orc threw himself on her, putting his body between her and the enraged Orc prince, begging. The big grey tail sweeps around. Looking at the ears and tail, it seems that it is either a wolf or a dog. Gretel subconsciously assessed the girl's situation. His face was pale and his breathing was weak. There are 2 tooth marks on the carotid artery, which are bright red in color and look like they have just healed. It was obvious that he was in hemorrhagic shock. So, was the vampire who was knocked out just now causing trouble? Greet reflexively wanted to pounce down to check her, but it was easy to hold back. After walking around half a circle, he went over and asked Archmage Lebron. Can you save her? It's too difficult. Archmage Lebron shook his head, looking tired. We've already talked about it, why do you suddenly come here? The beasts are fierce and the vampires are proud. If they really get torn apart, the alliance they just negotiated will collapse immediately. She lost too much blood. Only by successfully embracing her for the first time can she survive. If the true blood is taken away, she will die immediately. And the healing spell cannot be used. If the true blood conflicts with the healing spell, she will die immediately. Let me try. Greet was unwilling to give in. As for hemorrhagic shock, this person is not dead yet, so we can still try to save him. Besides, if the rescue is unsuccessful, isn't it just death? Archmage Lebron was silent. Allowing the girl to die and the agreement to collapse would be detrimental to the parliament. Let Gretel give it a try, and if it fails, which is a high possibility, it will be bad for the parliament. The orcs who were saddened by the loss of their priest may not necessarily think that Gretel was well-intentioned, and the possibility of anger was high. If Greet is not allowed to try, he has already proposed it, and if he stops it himself, what will the orcs think? Does it feel like Parliament is standing idly by? While hesitating, Gretel took a step forward and faced the orc prince directly. He stared into the prince's eyes, opened his arms, and stood between him and the vampire girl. Can you let me try to save him? If he just lost too much blood, I just saved one a few days ago. That's right, he just saved one. Viscount Sebesh emerged from nowhere to testify. The orc prince's brows were filled with anger. He looked at Gretel and then forcibly suppressed his anger. He knew this healer. It was this one who cut open the chest of his squire and brother, the werewolf Simon, and saved the man from death. Now, he opens his mouth to save people. Please, the orc prince's voice was low and he reached out toward the ground. Please use your methods to your heart's content without any worries. If you don't succeed, the orcs will also be grateful for your help. Greet nodded and rushed down to check. The red-haired girl was wrapped in a sheet, and it seemed that she was only wrapped in this sheet. A big fiery red tail was exposed from under the sheets, plump, shiny, and smooth. Fox people? Gretel's mind was spinning rapidly. By the way, what is the blood type of the fox? Hurry up and call everyone in. All your subordinates, he turned and ordered the orc prince. The tone was decisive and without hesitation. After saying that, he flipped through the space bag and started to take out things. Sarala, take her into the room. Your Excellency, Archmage, please clear the place and no one else comes in. Your Excellency, Marquis, when I say yes, I ask you to take out the true blood. The silver dragon girl responded, and with a casual tug, she threw the orc lying on top of the red-haired girl far away. She picked up the fox girl with both hands, looked around, and ran to the nearest room. Greet followed behind, taking out Ringer's solution, needles, and seeds quickly with quick hands and feet. Alas, the ion content and osmotic pressure of orc blood have not been measured before. Now, we can only treat a dead horse as a living horse doctor, no, a dead fox as a living fox doctor. He raised his hand, and a levitation technique wrapped around the salt water bottle and floated high. One end of the vine penetrates into the bottle, and the other end is connected to the needle. With a casual touch, the needle pierced the shriveled blood vessel, and Ringer's solution was immediately injected. Your Highness the Prince. Are your people here? Quick, let me test your blood type. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today I read a book called Returning to the Republic of China to be a Doctor. It was well written and the plot was smooth. And the author graduated from surgery. Professional. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 555. Greet urged the orc prince to find someone while working. Take another needle and connect it to the vine to make the wall of the vine thicker and harder, and you will have a ready-made syringe. This end pierced the patient's right radial artery, and the other end released a small whirlwind. Negative pressure was generated, and blood gurgled out, flowing into the test tube along the soft end of the vine. Is anyone here yet? Speed. Greet urged again. After pressing the right thumb, the hard vine wall softened, retracted, and the end was closed, softly resting on the skin of the wrist. Gretel threw an adhesion spell, letting the vine stick to the girl's wrist and fixing it, and clapped his palms with satisfaction. Simple version of indwelling needle, done. He took advantage of the opportunity, took an electrocardiogram, and began to test the blood type. In the vision of meditation, the feedback given by the blood test magic was bizarre, and had nothing in common with the pictures he saw when he studied human blood types before. So the blood type of orcs is really different from humans. However, there is no reproductive isolation between humans and orcs. I heard that there seem to be half-orcs. What is going on? Forget it, now is not the time to delve into this. In this fantasy world, there are undead creatures like vampires. Maybe the reason for reproductive isolation is different from the previous life. Gretel took a deep breath, flying magic tricks in his hands, and sketched the picture he saw on the white wall for verification later. Red, orange, yellow, and green, 7 colorful colors, no need to find paint, no need to mix colors, control with your mind, you can erase it at any time if you make a mistake. In addition to its short existence, only 1 hour, it is actually suitable for home travel, murder, and arson. No, it is the best choice for short-term note-taking. After finishing the painting here, there were clattering footsteps on the other side, and a group of orcs poured in. Greet looked back and immediately frowned. The orc prince's blonde hair flows in a full circle from the top of his head to his chin. His face is quite broad and his ears are short and round. Looking at it, reminds him of an African lion. There are various attendants around the prince, including those with straight horns on their heads, some with leopard prints on their faces, and the cat girl who climbed the mast last time. There is also a young girl with a light figure and a pair of wide wings on her back, with a white center and pure black edges. Bird tribe. Crane clan? Crane. What is this all about? With so many different races, are they sure their blood types will be the same? Those who are of the same race as that girl, come forward. Others, stay back first. Gretel shouted. The probability that foxes and vixen people have the same blood type is relatively high, but for other races, the probability of having the same blood type is lower. As for herbivores. Herbivores, why are you here to join in the fun? Your species are too far apart. There is also the bird clan, you are even further away, and the possibility of matching your blood types may be infinitely close to zero. There was a jostling among the orcs. Then, a thin man squeezed up from the crowd, wearing a grey half-worn coat with dull fur and a quill in his ear. The first time Greet saw him, a profession came to mind. Accounting. It's just you. No one else. The man from the fox tribe nodded sadly and swept his big tail behind him. His fur was grey and yellow and mottled, which was completely different from the bright and plump fox girl. Although Gretel's aesthetics have not been affected by the orcs, he still feels that they are quite different. The man from the fox clan stretched out his hand tremblingly, trying to cut it open with a knife, but he couldn't do it even after raising the knife several times. The warrior next to him snorted disdainfully and raised his hand to grab it. I come. Don't. Gretel quickly stopped. Just a needle prick, why do you always have to make such a big incision, ugh. No, the blood type is wrong. Are there any from the dog clan? Or from the wolf clan? Remember that foxes belong to the canine family, so the probability of matching blood types should be higher than those of other families. With this shout, a row of orc warriors stood up, all in high spirits. Without waiting for Gretel to speak, he stretched out his left hand, raised his palm, and drew the knife with his right hand. Gretel. He finally understood that carnivores were the main fighting race of the orc kingdom, and half of the orc prince's escorts were wolves. Since he is a guard, not being afraid of pain or death is a basic operation. Anyone who waits for him to poke a small needle to collect blood will probably be laughed to death. Fortunately, this objectively improves the speed of blood testing. Gretel patted the magic on their hands one by one, patted one and looked at the wall, patted the other and looked at the wall again. After one round of shooting, there were actually 3 left. The preliminary screening passed, the cross-match passed, and the blood was quickly poured into the body of the fox girl. Gretel glanced at the lines on the electrocardiogram cloud screen and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, okay, the heartbeat rate is still like a living person, there is time to save. Your Majesty the Marquis, please draw the true blood. Marquis Turgot walked forward quickly with a gloomy face. He stretched out his hand, flicked a thin and sharp nail from his fingertip, and lightly scratched the girl's carotid artery. Blood did not spurt out. On the contrary, a mass of dark red, almost black, extremely viscous blood stuck to His Excellency the Marquis' nails, flowed upwards along his fingers, and fell silently into his palm. Arterial blood would never have this color. Then, this is the true blood of the vampire clan. Gretel watched with bated breath. The moment the dirty blood flowed out and the blood spurted out, he quickly pressed down on the girl's carotid artery. The other hand had already condensed a ball of healing energy and gently applied it to the wound. Let go, there is no active bleeding, and there is no swelling of the neck skin. Very good. Blocking the carotid artery for just a few seconds will not cause hypoxia to the brain. Next, it depends on the girl's life. Gretel looked at the electrocardiogram attentively. Next to him, Archmage Lebrun took a step forward and lowered his voice. Can it be saved? Maybe. Look, the heart rate has slowed down. Slow down. Several voices were shocked at the same time. Is slowing down okay? Isn't that why you can't dance anymore? Gretel smiled and shook his head. The heartbeat slows down, which is exactly a good trend. It used to be over 150 per minute, but now it has dropped to 140. And judging from the waveform, the heartbeat is getting stronger and stronger, and the person is gradually slowing down. 3 wolf warriors, each donating 400 ml of blood, can supplement 1,200 ml of blood for the injured. Coupled with the infused Ringer's solution to replenish blood volume, it should be enough. No problem, I can live. The old man next to the orc prince approached shakily and sang in a low voice. A light red light shot out from his hand and fell on the girl. Immediately, the fox girl's eyes fluttered and she moaned softly. The breath of life has been strengthened. If this continues, we will indeed be able to survive. The dwarves, barbarians, and 2 healers also responded in the affirmative. The orc prince took a long breath, nodded gratefully to Gretel, and suddenly turned to Marquis Turgot. Now, please tell me something. For no reason, why do you want to make our priests a blood servant? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 556. Yes, why do you want to make that fox girl a blood servant? Master Lebrun also wants to know the answer. He glanced at Marquis Turgot with a cold face and urged with his eyes. Say it quickly. Why are the younger generations of your family so stupid that they want to touch that fox priestess? Whether you become a blood servant or a descendant, something big will happen. Marquis Turgot's face turned dark. These bastards, they do whatever they want in their own territory, but they still mess around when they come out to do business. If the kid who caused the trouble was his descendant, he would have killed him long ago. However, that person is from another marquis. Even if he shouts to kill, he still needs to find out the matter. He half turned around, raised his hand and grabbed it, and a black wind roared out. A moment later, the young vampire who had been slapped out before was pulled back in a spin and slapped directly to the ground. Explain. Marquis Turgot moved his fingers slightly. The black wind was like a whip, and with one stroke, there were 5 blood marks. What's going on? Are you dizzy? The young vampire screamed. On the bed, the fox girl opened her eyes slightly, and when she saw the vampire, she groaned and fainted again. His face, which had just turned around, became a bit paler. Greed frowned slightly. He turned to Archmage Lebrun and lowered his voice. Your Excellency, Archmage, there are patients here, please keep quiet. His voice was low and soft, but his tone was firm. Archmage LeBlanc glanced at him silently. After spending so many days together, he also knew what kind of character Gretel was. This child is humble, gentle, and easy to talk to, but when it comes to matters related to patients, he is strict and does not give any discount. Arguing with his patient here? Noisy, the person he finally saved? Gretel really dares to fall out, and she won't give anyone any face. The Archmage sighed and turned to the Orc Prince. The one who suffered the loss and was rescued was his after all. Archmage Lebron was very angry and disgusted with him. Let us treat you safely here, and let's ask questions in another place. The group of people came in force and exited with a rumble. Sarah glanced at it and looked out desperately, wanting to know what was going on. Greet looked at her with a smile. If you want to know, just go and listen. I'm here, it'll be okay. Are your treatment skills sufficient? And that cardiopulmonary resuscitation, are you strong enough without me? Don't worry, it's no problem. Gretel patted the space bag with a smile. The dark gold skeleton turned into a ray of light, flew out, and formed itself on the ground. If necessary, he will be responsible for pressing the chest, and I will be responsible for artificial respiration. It is the deep breathing spell. Try it once and blow in air once. It is very convenient. The treatment skills are not enough, and I can call you again in time dash. That's okay. I'm going to go see it. Miss Yinlong flew out happily. Greet smiled at her back, turned back, and pressed on the back of the fox priestess hand. Lift your fingers, 1 second, 2 seconds. The blood finally slowly returned, and Greet frowned. The peripheral blood return is too slow and the blood volume is not enough. His previous estimate of blood loss seemed a bit too optimistic. While thinking about it, he activated the healing technique, and the white light shone through the sheets, shining on the fox girl's abdomen. A large amount of blood loss will damage the stomach, intestines, kidneys, liver, etc. Through the door, the sounds of quarreling, scolding, and roaring kept coming. Greet turned a deaf ear, looked at the fox girl's recovery, and turned to the 3 mobile blood banks nearby. Come on, you, it's you, hold out your hand. This bag of blood is almost finished, it's your turn. These wolf guards all look quite strong, maybe weighing more than 180 pounds. The blood flowed out gurglingly. Gretel cast an anticoagulant spell on the blood bottle and muttered in his heart. It is definitely no problem to draw 400 ml of blood. In extreme cases, if a person draws 200 ml more blood, it should not kill him. Well, at worst, I'll give each of them a bottle of salt water. He has plenty of salt water. As soon as he hung up the blood bottle again, he heard a long scream outside. Low and hoarse, as if his neck was stepped on. I didn't want to turn her into a descendant. I really didn't want to. I was playing with her and accidentally sucked a few mouthfuls of blood. I thought she was about to die. Nonsense. Why is the priestess of my tribe with you? That's not the key is, why did you suck so much blood? What happened? I don't know, I just overplayed and my mind got confused. By the way, there seemed to be a scent. You said yes. It's true. If you don't believe it, go search for it. Go search for it. Then Gretel couldn't hear anything. There was a lot of noise, and they walked far away to another courtyard. I didn't know whether to search or verify. After a while, the silver dragon girl came back with a gust of wind, her face turned pale with anger. How disgusting, how disgusting. What's the matter? Greet turned away from the electrocardiograph. Sarala sat down next to him, and when she saw the unconscious fox priestess on the bed, she said poof and turned away. She and others went too far. The vampire sucked her blood while she was in a daze. Huh, the orcs even said that the vampire forced her, but they just took out the letter. Greet shook off sweat. Girl, The patient is still half conscious. If someone hears your yelling, it will have a great impact on the recovery. And there are orcs here. If you talk to someone about them to their face, it will be embarrassing for others. He put his finger on his lips and said shhh. Sarala stuck out her tongue and moved her hand, and a colorless and invisible barrier rose from the ground, surrounding the two of them in a circle and separating them from the people around them. Gretel quickly turned around and glanced at the wolf guards. They looked at their noses, mouths, and mouths, pretending not to hear anything. Sarala followed his gaze and continued to complain. They found Mixiang at the scene, used magic to search for traces, and found a blood slave. She admitted that she had stolen Mixiang. She said she wanted to make things bigger, kill people, and break up the alliance. He is indeed a member of the Guanghui sect. He smells bad. Is it the glorious nun that she saved before? A pale face silently appeared in Greet's mind. The dull expression, the dark collar around his neck, the occasional flash of resentment in his eyes. To be fair, given the way she was treated, it is not difficult to understand why she wants revenge and wants to take the opportunity to break up the alliance. But I'm sorry, everyone is hostile. Since she has done such a thing, she probably won't be able to survive. Then what? Then it seems like it's been said, since the fox girl got together with that vampire, and the vampire was framed by others, it was not intentional. As long as she can survive, everything will be easy. I am impatient to hear their hypocrisy, came right back. As he spoke, he glanced outside and suddenly waved away the barrier. Soon, a large group of people rumbled in. The orc prince took the lead and held Gretel's hands. Thank you for saving our priest. Master Nordmark, the orcs will remember your kindness and will never forget it. So, what about the medical expenses? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. The average order has been falling. I want to take a day off and let it rise a bit. Thanks to @MagicalGirlPika for the 100 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 557. Of course there will be medical expenses. The value of a fox priestess is much higher than that of a wolf guard, and the consultation fee or thank you gift paid by the orcs is also much higher. Without saying a word, the orc prince sent someone to deliver a set of gold vessels as a thank you gift. The nearly 1-foot-tall milk teapot is made of pure gold. The hunting pictures on the pot body are vivid, and the eyes of each beast are inlaid with gems. There are 8 pure gold tea bowls that match the milk teapot, each with a bowl lid and bowl holder. The 8 bowl lids are put together, which is exactly the scene of the 4 seasons. A large plate that can hold all the teapots and tea bowls. It is 2 feet in diameter and has grape patterns and bird and animal patterns on the edge as thin as a hair. The amount of gold and precious stones used beautifully reveals a few words. Local tycoon. Big dog owner. Pearls are like earth and gold are like iron. Regardless of its artistic value, the gold and gems alone are worth at least 3,000 gold coins. After Master Norwood appraised the set of utensils, he came to the conclusion. The magic circle embedded in the teapot can keep the liquid inside fresh for at least a week. Boss, the orcs are quite generous. If it can be cashed out, it can support the hospital's expenses for 1 or 2 months, or build an additional inpatient building. Greed praised the speed at which he made money. The orcs gave him a heavy gift, and as the vampire who caused the trouble, they naturally couldn't be stingy in taking action. However, their gift-giving style is too different from that of the orcs, and Gretel really cannot adapt to it. What's this? Greed stared at the contents in the box in a daze for 3 or 4 seconds. A. Hairpin. Hair comb. The two long footpoles are pale in color and look like they are made of bone. A bat is carved with a similar material on the top. Is it a bat? The unfolded bone wings, membranes, fingers, and claws, every detail is lifelike. There is a black human figure carved in the center of the bat wing, with his hands spread out and resting on top of the bat wing, his legs curled up and squatting, and sharp claws popping out from his toes. The little man, who is less than a finger high, has every detail from facial expressions to body movements. Turn the hairpin left and right, and the little man's eyes seem to be staring at you. The carving is very good, the material is very interesting, and it is also packaged in a coffin-like box. The question is, what is this? Master Norwood looked at it, but couldn't figure it out. He is not a magician who specializes in appraisal, so he can only feel the strong dark atmosphere from this magic instrument. Lin An passed by leisurely and recognized him at a glance. The bat comb is polished from the bones of the vampire Bat King, with a processed dark crystal stone embedded in it. It is used to gather negative energy, drive undead creatures, or drive vampire bats. The effect is quite good. Crack. Gretel closed the lid of the box at the speed of light and put it directly into Lin's hand. Magic props that the necromancer can use, for those who need them most. Great. However, what does the vampire mean by giving me this thing? I am not from Black Crow Swamp. In addition to the two families that actually benefited, Archmage Lebron also greatly praised Gretel. The words imply that Gretel played a great role in this diplomatic negotiation, and the Parliament will never forget it. In this negotiation work, he will complete the task and issue it to each participant, which will be regarded as completing the annual task of the Parliament. Depending on the nature of the work, participants will be paid more or less, depending on Gretel's level of participation. Don't worry, the transaction fee for blood test magic does not count. Your participation bonus this time alone will not be less than 1,000 contribution points. Archmage Lebron swore that. Just kidding, if Gretel hadn't come to the rescue, this alliance would have collapsed at the last moment. Greet thanked him seriously, turned back, and went back to doing his own thing. The hospital has entered a virtuous circle, and the Master Tower has entered a virtuous circle. At this stage, he is not short of money for the time being. The bonus is a little more or less, but I don't feel much. As for advancement, well, I just advanced once, and the pressure from the teacher is not very great. Moreover, from level 5 to level 6, there is no new magic to learn, and they are basically in the review and consolidation stage. The top priority at this stage is to practice the animal experiment of patent ductus arteriosus repeatedly to consolidate it to proficiency. Gretel was buried in the hospital, concentrating on having sex with the animals. Operate, cut open the chest, connect blood vessels, extend vines, treat, observe, do dissections to determine the experimental results. In order to develop a rabies vaccine, Black Crow Swamp is eager to catch all the stray dogs in Nevis, and even Greet is not short of experimental materials. Eventually, even the necromancer apprentice in the hospital could dissect several dogs a day. The dog's survival time also gradually progressed from half a day, 1 day, or 2 days to half a month or 1 month. He was bouncing around, eating and sleeping, and there was no sign of anything wrong at all. It seems that there is no problem. After sorting out the last batch of experimental records, Gretel let out a long sigh of relief. This batch of experimental dogs, a total of 10, successfully survived for 1 month after the operation without any discomfort. Echocardiograms showed that their blood flow had all returned to normal, their hearts were of normal size, and their vital signs were good after being sensed by the priest of the god of nature. 2 of the dogs got pregnant successfully. If animal experiments reach this level, it should be ready for clinical use. Even if the interventional experiment failed, it didn't matter. He also performed a series of minimally invasive surgeries to block the ducts through the chest, and the experiments were equally successful. Brother Lin, Aurora, Mr. Norwood, I'm going back to my hometown. Gretel packed up his things and said goodbye to them. There is a neighbor's little sister in my hometown who has congenital heart disease. She is waiting for me to treat her. This round trip will take several months. Is it up to you to leave the mage tower to you? Leave it to me, Aurora was envious. They are all 6th level mages. Gretel can run around just by talking to the Lord of Thunder, but his teacher locked him up in Nevis. Hey, when will he be able to travel around the country? Going back to Heartland City, Lin remembered his first acquaintance with Gretel and smiled slightly. I won't go. I've been busy recently to help me find good friends with Gearman. By the way, if you need an independent place to live and feel that the mage tower is too narrow, you still remember how to get to my cave, right? Mage Norwood prepared the map silently. As for Bernard, the barbarian packed a lot of luggage, led the silver moon deer, and stood in front of Gretel. The meaning is clear. Take me with you. Even more excited than him was Cyrilla. The silver dragon girl swept the teacups, teapots, bedding, and alchemy equipment for daily experiments into the space bag, and jumped directly onto the back of the silver moon deer. Gretel, let's go together. I want to see what your hometown is like. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Ed for the reward of 100 starting coins for riding a donkey to see the aurora. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 558. Oha! Come on! Gretel shouted. The flying technique was activated, and the mountain wind swept him up into the sky, flying forward rapidly in the canyon. Cyrilla flew beside him with flying skills, and the barbarian rode Appa, running wildly underneath. Gretel was originally eager to return home. He wanted to borrow an airship or take the teleportation array to the big city near Heartland and then turn back. If we go this way, we can reach home directly in 1 day or 2 days at most. However, both plans were rejected by the Lord of Thunder. The legendary mage lowered his eyes and said calmly, I suggest you walk there steadily. Well, then we have to leave by land. Including the previous method of taking a sea ship from Nevisport, walking south for a while, packing up and putting it away. The straight line distance from Nevis to Heartland City is only 400 to 500 kilometers. Gretel sent a message to his teacher, Elder Irwin, that with the help of birds tamed by the order of the god of nature, he could make the round trip in a week at most. However, it is not that easy for people to walk over. If this was in the wilderness, Apasha would run at a speed of 2,000 miles in 5 days. But heading south from the city of Nevis, the first step is to go around Eagle Peak, and then there are mountains and mountains. From Eagle Peak to the south, within 40 miles, there are undulating mountains and deep canyons. The Thunder Lord meant to let him go out on his own. Whether you climb hard, use flying skills, walk along the canyon, or directly climb over the mountains and ridges, in short, go on your own. Although he didn't say not to let Sarah lead him, Gretel felt that if he really let Sarah take her dragon form to lead him, or even to explore the way, he would definitely die miserably. So I had to leave. Gretel is flying above, and the barbarian is riding a deer below. Ah! It's going to hit the mountain. It's going to hit. Featherfall technique. Misstep, the airflow changes greatly between the canyons, it is not a good place for novices to practice flying skills. Sarah laughed so hard that she fell on her back. Gretel floated down slowly, squeezed onto the back of the silver moon deer, and continued on his way. The 8th level monster's ability to travel through mountains and rivers is much stronger than Gretel's. The wind blew in his ears, and a large section of it rushed out in an instant. Wait a minute. Stop, let me look at the map. There is a mountain on the left, a mountain in front of you on the left, and a lake in front of you. Why is it different from what is drawn on the map? Where did I go? Greet Mrs. Modern Mapping Technology so much, Mrs. Baidu Navigation so much, and Mrs. the small game map with the red dot when you open it casually. This is a crappy map. Draw a triangle to represent a mountain, and draw a circle to represent a lake. There are no contour lines, and the scale is estimated casually. After only walking for a long time, he no longer knew where he was. Greet turned around and looked at the map. After looking at it for a long time, he looked up. By the way, where is south? Let me check. The direction of the sun is, the current time is. That's Nan over there. Cyrilla stretched out her hand lazily. Gretel was still a little unconvinced. He was right for a long time and then calculated for a long time. It's really over there. How do you know? I just know it. Cyrilla answered naturally. The slender palms were raised high, and the fingertips were white and transparent. A flash of light flashed by, and Gretel suddenly realized. These are dragon scales. Can you feel your scales directly? Of course. I can feel what you are talking about, infrared rays, ultraviolet rays, and various other things. There are definitely more than just these types of rays in the sun. Gretel's heart was beating wildly. Radio waves? X-rays? Gamma rays? What kind of things can Cyrilla feel? In an instant, he thought of countless papers and 7 or 8 ways to defeat the Glory God sect. It's a pity that these things need to be tested first, and they can only be found in Nevis. If it's not good now, we should turn back immediately. Oh, wait, there seems to be a village ahead. Let's go over and ask. Fortunately, the mountains around Igor Peak can be regarded as the back garden of the Parliament, with many villages, mage towers, and production bases dotted around it. It's still possible to ask and check where you are. Greet stumbled, asked people everywhere, and took countless detours. Fly for a while, run for a while, fly for a while, and run for a while. If you find that you have taken the wrong path, you must either turn back or climb over the mountain. Just use the flying technique to fly up and flip over directly. Aim in the right direction and keep walking south. You can always get out anyway. Gretel climbed in the mountains for 7 days. 7 days later, when I climbed up the mountain ridge, my eyes suddenly opened up. I couldn't believe I had climbed out. Out of the mountains. Out of the mountains. In front of you and under your feet, there is a smooth river. Next, all you have to do is sit on APA and drive straight forward. Yo-ho. Appa. Let's run. Silver Moon Deer snorted in disgust. He lowered his head and bumped his nose, causing Gretel to stumble. Gretel lowered his head and looked at himself again. His coat was a mess, his trousers were covered in strands, and his shoe uppers were all covered in mud. Cleaning technique. Cleaning technique. Cleaning technique. It's easy to leave after leaving the mountain. All the way straight south, racing on the plains, seeing winding mountains, encountering cities and towns. You can travel during the day and open a shelter hut at night, so you don't have to worry about finding a place to stay. After 3 days of driving like this, they ran from the mountains in the northern part of the Kingdom of Kent to the Central Plains, and then from the Central Plains to Neuster County in the south. After a slight turn, they reached the city of Heartland. The mountains, rivers, and fields in front of me are becoming more and more familiar. Gradually, the mountain roads he patrolled appeared, the huts where he rescued patients appeared, and the mage tower where he studied magic. Gretel became increasingly silent. He stopped Appa, made a long circle, and walked towards the city gate. When he could see the city gate, he simply jumped off the deer's back and walked forward slowly step by step. When the young man left home and the old man came back, his local pronunciation has not changed, but it is not an exaggeration to say that his hair on his temples has faded. After all, it had only been 4 years since Gretel left his hometown and returned home. 4 years, from a 16-year-old boy to a 20-year-old young man. From level 1 mage, level 1 priest, to both level 6 priest and mage. The treatment plan for patent ductus arteriosus has been completed and animal experiments have been verified. When leaving home, Greet gave himself a time limit of 8 years to complete. If possible, it is best to complete it within 5 years. But now, he hurriedly and slowly gained another year. 1 year in advance means that the disease course may not be in the advanced stage, it means that pulmonary hypertension may not have started yet, or it may not be serious, it means that reverse shunt may not have started, and myocardial damage may not have occurred. It means that it can be treated, the prognosis will be better, and little Avril can grow up healthy and happy. How is she? Is Uncle Karen's beard stiffer? Is Aunt Eileen a little fatter? Brother Raymond, the girl who danced hand in hand at the Midsummer Festival, they got married the year before last. When will they have a baby? Elder Irwin, Bald Bishop, Master Gearman, Master Elliot, Little John, the spellcasters who work in my clinic. Everyone, how are you doing? I had sent many letters before, but they always only said that they were doing well, and they never told him if they had any difficulties. Gretel walked slowly, step by step. After walking through the fields and onto the road, and about to reach the city gate, he suddenly quickened his pace and raised his smile. Brother Raymond. Brother Vala. I'm back. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There will be double monthly tickets at the end of this month, please remember to leave them for me. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 559. Raymond's pupils shrank slightly. Then, he relaxed completely, exhaled, and strode forward. Greet. Little Greet. It's really you who is back. He opened his arms 5 or 6 steps away. 4 steps, 3 steps, 2 steps, his eyes fell on the badge on Gretel's chest, and he suddenly froze. In the center of the fourfold ring, a bright silver star shines quietly. 6th level magician. Behind him, the sound of the city guards breathing in came one after another. There are only a handful of professionals of this level in the entire Heartland city. Especially the spellcasters, several lord bishops, and the hosts of the Mage Tower. Each of them is a big shot they see who needs to bow and be called Your Excellency. Raymond suddenly froze in place. He opened his arms stiffly, but did not move forward. After a moment, he quietly dropped it and wiped the sweat from his palms on his pants. I'm still little Greet, Gretel couldn't help but said, rushing up to him and hugging him tightly. Tighten your arms hard, creak, creak, creak. Brother Raymond, you have grown a lot stronger. Are you not far away from the night? Raymond finally laughed. Feeling the tightness of his arms and the tight compression of his ribs, he let out a hey and stretched his arms outward to break free. You are not strong. How strong you were before, you are still strong now, but you have grown taller. He raised his hand and gestured. When he left home, Gretel was half a head shorter than him, and the top of his hair only reached his chin, but now it reaches the middle of his eyebrows. You haven't practiced well in the past few years, have you? Gretel lowered his head to avoid his gaze, and like the original boy, he quickly and slightly stuck out his tongue. Not only did I not practice well, I actually regressed from level 1 warrior to level 0, later the teacher commented, it's not easy to regress to your level. If it hadn't been for the 5th level of training, Brother Raymond would probably have seen a useless loser. Brother Raymond, can you go home early today? He simply changed the topic forcefully. I want to eat the bacon made by Aunt Eileen. Okay, Raymond couldn't stop smiling in his eyes. He stretched out his hand and purred Gretel's hair, turned around halfway, and raised his hand to his fellow soldiers. Little Greet is back. I'll go back first, you can ask for leave on my behalf. Okay, Captain. Captain, please feel free to go back. When someone asks us, we just say that the Master Mage is back. For this reason, even the city lord will grant leave. The soldiers responded with smiles. Gretel turned around and waved to Cyrilla. Cyrilla, let's go. Deer's hooves are enough. The beautiful silver-haired girl is still the most eye-catching one in the crowd even if she puts away her long elf ears. Under the gaze of the city guard soldiers, she was followed by a giant deer, running lightly. Gretel, are you leaving? I want to see where you used to live. Walk. They walk straight ahead along the avenue. This is the only road in the entire Heartland city that can accommodate silver moon deer to walk freely. Just like that, the giant deer, with its back taller than a human head and its long horns more than 4 meters wide, occupied the entire street once it stood there. Along the way, without much effort, the clearing effect was achieved. Pedestrians stood under the eaves one after another, and the carriages retreated into the alleys to make way for them. Just kidding, such a big deer is definitely a high-level monster. If it gets attacked by it, you don't know how it will die. And there was someone in front of him leading it slowly. Those who can control high-level monsters must also be high-level professionals. Can't afford to offend, can't afford to offend. The streets were cleared for a moment. As Greet walked, he smiled and gave instructions to Cyrilla. This is the best commercial street in the city. Of course, it's actually just this commercial street. This store sells all kinds of things from overseas, including tobacco and so on. There is a store here that sells paper, pens, and ink. When I went to buy paper, the boss was choking. I saved his life and the boss gave me a huge pile of paper. This is the biggest bakery in the city, but I actually think Aunt Maggie's bread is better. Cyrilla turned her head around, glanced left and right, and then looked away without interest. Suddenly, there was a cacophony of hoofbeats in front, and several horses rushed over quickly. They rushed to the front, then quickly reined in the reins and jumped off the horses. Master Mage. Nolan Knight? Flynn Knight? I am Gretel. You don't remember me? Greet smiled brightly. The visitor was stunned for a moment, looked up and down, and saw the shadow of the boy from 4 years ago on Gretel's face, and then relaxed at the same time. Little Gretel, no, Mage Nordmark? Are you back? Those who hurried over were the captain of the city guard, Nolan Knight, and the squadron leader, Flynn Knight. When Gretel left, one of them was at level 7 and the other at level 5. I heard that there was a suspected high-level monster strutting into the city. The two of them came immediately as they were responsible for their duties. Unfortunately, he got sidetracked from the guard reporting at the city gate and did not get the news. Seeing that they were acquaintances, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God, there is no need to fight. One on each side, they led the horses and accompanied Gretel forward. Mage Nordmark, are you back? Is this giant deer your mount? What level is it? How long will you stay here this time? Or will you stay? This lady is chatting while walking. Greet had a smile on his face and answered all their questions. After walking about half a street, another horse suddenly rushed forward. The rider dismounted and saluted directly in front of Gretel. Mage Nordmark. I have been ordered by the City Lord's Palace to ask the Master to come to the City Lord's Palace to have a talk. The road ahead has been completely cleared, and a straight avenue leads to the City Lord's Palace. Behind the knight, a 4-horse luxury carriage came galloping, only a few dozen paces slower. Obviously, the City Lord sent his own car to pick him up. Gretel sighed silently. It's so troublesome. He shouldn't have ridden Appa into the city and alerted so many people at once, if only he had known to sneak in quietly. Sighs are sighs, things still need to be done. Greet's expression was calm, and he skillfully displayed the tempered expression of the deputy director of the emergency department, which was both kind and dignified. I am returning home this time to visit relatives and friends, and my return is as fast as an arrow. I appreciate the kindness of the city lord. When I meet my relatives and friends, I will naturally come to visit. After speaking, he turned around and looked at Nolan Knight and Flynn Knight with a bright smile. Uncle Nolan, Uncle Flynn, I'm sorry, I'm going to Uncle Karen's house first. See you later. Sarah, let's go. As he spoke, he turned around at a 90-degree angle, walked into the alley, and waved out. A ray of light shot out from the hand of the silver-haired girl, and the 2 to 3 meter tall giant deer suddenly turned into a miniature deer, jumping behind them, burrowing around all the way. The alleys are narrow and the eaves are low. Gretel didn't mind it at all, and even bought a big paper bag of bread from a bakery he passed by, folding his hands and walking forward quickly. Not long after, he arrived in front of a low brick and stone house and shouted, "Uncle Karen! And Eileen! I'm back. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 560. Dang Kang. A crisp sound fell through the wooden door. Immediately afterwards, there was a series of clattering, crashing, and God knows what was being pushed down. After a while, the door creaked and opened gently. A middle-aged woman stood in the door, looking at each other across the threshold from Gretel. She is thin and has strands of silver in her hair. Compared to Gretel's memory, she looks much older to the naked eye. He looked at Gretel without blinking for a long time before he uttered an ouch. Why did you come here to buy something? Come in. Come in and sit. Raymond. You kid won't stop me. After saying that, he walked out of the house and stretched out his hand to pull Greet. The palm of his hand was about to reach it, but he retracted it all of a sudden. He wiped it on his apron uneasily, and then wiped it again. Gretel, you are back. And Eileen. Greet rushed over directly. One hand was holding the bag of bread, and the other hand was free to hold her palm tightly. It still feels rough and cracked when touched by fingers, exactly the same as 4 years ago. Washing, cooking, wiping and sewing, these hands have to do so much work all day long, taking care of the whole family. Gretel didn't even think about it. The white light on the palm of my hand spread all the way up and Eileen's hand. Rough became delicate, dry and cracked became smooth. And Eileen looked at him blankly, and finally breathed out with tears in her eyes. You kid. This moment is just like that moment. After Gretel awakened to the healing technique, she also treated the laceration on her hand in the same way on the first morning when she went to the Mage Tower to learn. 4 years, 4 years. Little Gretel has grown a lot taller and become a big shot after being away from home for 4 years. The way he looked at her was still the same as the child before. Auntie, I'm thirsty. I want to drink water. Greet stuffed a large bag of bread directly into her arms and demanded confidently. And Eileen hugged her hurriedly, said in agreement, and hurried inside. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly turned back and looked at the silver dragon girl. Who is this girl? Your friend? We. This is Sarah, my friend, come and play with me. Greet smiled and waved to Sarah to come forward. Sarah, this is Aunt Eileen, who watched me grow up. My father died early, and Uncle Karen and Aunt Eileen have always taken care of me as their own child. Aunt Eileen Severa called after him, smiled sweetly, and stretched out her hand. I'm Cyrilla, Cyrilla Moonlight Fleischgrate. Nice to meet you. Ah, this. And Eileen was in a hurry. Cyrilla has rare silver hair, beautiful appearance, and noble bearing. In the back alleys of this small town, she is like a fairy descending to earth. Not to mention, she also has a rare last name that sounds like she came from an extraordinary family. A girl who shakes her hand and says nice to meet you. How should she answer? Would the girl think she was poor, dirty, or tacky, and then even Gretel would hate her? She shook Sarah's hand, quickly let go, and invited them to come inside and sit down. As soon as he entered the house, a copper basin fell on the floor, and there were also fragments of dishes on the floor. Apparently he heard Greet calling the door, and he was so busy that he fell to the ground with a crash. And Eileen blushed suddenly. This way, this way. She had to clean up the floor, drag stools out for Greet and the others to sit on, and find clean cloths to clean the stools. She was so busy that she didn't know what to do. I was really busy, so I had to raise my voice. Avril, come out and help. Avril. Coming. A thin voice sounded from the back room. The footsteps were soft and quick, and in a moment the door curtain was lifted, and a little girl came out. His face was pale and his hair was withered and yellow, and he could tell at a glance that he had deficiencies. He is already in his early 10 years, but looking at him, he still looks like he is no more than 9 years old. She glanced at Gretel in confusion, moved her lips, and shouted something. The voice was so low that Gretel didn't even hear it clearly even if he pricked up his ears. Yes, you know without asking that Avril is too young to remember him. When he was a child, he met relatives he didn't recognize, and he also managed to get through in this way. Greet smiled secretly. The little girl immediately turned to her mother, bent down, and quickly helped put it away. Greet quickly stopped with a smile. And Eileen, stop being busy. With a random sweep of the cleaning technique, the pottery bowls and dishes, whether whole or broken, were all returned to their proper places. After sweeping again, all the dust and greasiness on the table and stools disappeared, leaving them clean. Greet clapped her hands and smiled at Aunt Eileen. Is Avril the only one here? Where is Brother Edward? Where is Brother David? Those two boys. Aunt Eileen was startled. She stared at the ground in disbelief and answered half-heartedly. Edward joined the city guard last year and is probably training at the moment. David is going to be an apprentice and should not be back until tonight. Hey, what are you drinking? Do you want sugar water? Cold water will do. Greet smiled at her, stood up and squatted in front of the little girl. Sister Avril, do you still remember me? The little girl had all the trash in front of her, her eyes widened in surprise. Seeing Gretel squatting down, his clear eyes turned on his face and he shook his head blankly. And Eileen immediately slapped her head. You girl with no memory. This is your brother Gretel. Have you forgotten? She's still little. Greet quickly stopped, took a piece of candy from the space bag, and put it into the little girl's hand. By the way, I looked at her calmly. Avril's face was pale, but luckily she wasn't swollen, her cheeks were not dark red, and her lips were light in color. Well, luckily she wasn't cyanotic yet. Sister Avril. I'm Brother Gretel. You gave me sweets, did you forget? The little girl frowned and thought for a moment, then suddenly her eyes lit up and she called out sweetly. Brother Gretel. Well, you're so good. Greet ruffled her hair. Holding her hand, he led her to sit on a stool and placed her next to him. Sister Avril, can my brother do a trick for you? With a snap of his fingers, the cloud screen unfolded. Wow! The little girl exclaimed softly. Staring at the cloud screen floating in front of me, staring at the undulating lines on it, without blinking, I even forgot to put the candy in my mouth. Beside her, Aunt Eileen rubbed her hands uneasily. Gretel, it's great that you're here, Why are you teasing her with magic? SHH. Greet stopped slightly. He stared at the electrocardiogram intently, his brain racing, analyzing every waveform, not daring to miss any abnormalities. The flickering light of the cloud screen fell on his face. At this moment, Gretel's young face was extremely serious. In the eyes of Aunt Eileen, he was no different from the magicians in the magic tower outside the city. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 561. Greet stared at the electrocardiogram intently. The P wave widens and the PR segment shortens. In lead V1, the P wave is positive at first, and then a deep and wide negative wave appears, left atrial hypertrophy. Right atrium, the right atrium is normal. The left ventricle was hypertrophic and the right ventricle was normal. No myocardial ischemia or myocardial damage was found. Very good. Really good. Gretel let out a long sigh of relief, and a heartfelt smile appeared on his face. Observation is just observation. With electrocardiogram testing, he can be more certain. The right atrium and right ventricle are normal, indicating that pulmonary hypertension has not yet appeared. Or, at most, it is just early-stage dynamic pulmonary hypertension without irreversible pathological changes. Everything is too late. If you treat it now, the prognosis will be very good. Let little Avril stare at the cloud screen, occasionally timidly reaching out to touch it, and then quickly retracting her fingertips when the cloud screen flashes. Greet stood up calmly and waved to Aunt Eileen. Aunt Eileen, I have something very important to tell you. 3 minutes later, Aunt Eileen stood outside the house, looking back at her daughter in the house from time to time, her face uncertain. Can it really be cured? Can her daughter, who was born frail and sick, really be cured? So many high-level healers, so many big figures, the bald bishop of the God of War Temple, Elder Irwin of the Natural God Church, have all seen it, and they all said that there is no cure. Can Gretel cure it? Can Gretel really be cured? Little Gretel. Her voice trembled, she said a few words, then paused. Auntie knows you have good intentions. You want to comfort Auntie and make Auntie happy. Can you really cure it? You, what level are you at now? Have you surpassed the bishop? Have you surpassed the elder? Gretel didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But it is normal to think about it. In this world, ordinary people who do not understand medicine can naturally only rely on the priest level to judge the level of treatment. Otherwise, what else can we expect in a world with a literacy rate of less than 5%? A high level has strong healing skills and can cure serious illnesses and serious injuries. A low level has weak healing skills and can only cure minor illnesses and injuries. Nothing wrong. Even in modern times, the public generally thinks that the director is better than the deputy director, and the deputy director is better than the chief. So how to convince her? How to make her believe that she really has a way to safely cure little Avril? Gretel only thought for a moment before making up his mind. He smiled slightly and held Aunt Eileen's hand sincerely. Aunt, I'm not going to lie to you, I can really do it. I can explain the specific treatment methods to you in detail, or, I invite the teacher and the bishop to come over, explain it to them, and let them prove it for me. Aunt Eileen's eyes lit up. Soon she shivered again, grabbed the edge of the apron, and kept rubbing. Isn't this not good? It's too troublesome for them. Those are all big shots. The bishop of the Temple of the God of War is a strong man that they can only look up to and bow to from a distance. He is also the last guarantee of a soldier's life when going to the battlefield. Although Elder Irwin is approachable and very talkative, he is not someone who can be dragged around casually. Even if this elder is Gretel's teacher, some favors should be reserved for critical moments. What's wrong? Greet raised his head, full of confidence. When I came back this time, I was going to visit them. I asked them to help me make a certificate. It's a piece of cake. And Eileen's fingers finally relaxed a little more tightly on her apron. Obviously, the little Gretel she watched growing up did not reassure her as much as the elders and bishops she had always looked up to. It would be great if those big names could prove it. Gretel pretended not to notice this. He smiled and shouted at the middle-aged woman. "And Eileen, what's for dinner? I want to drink the broth you cooked. What I miss most in Nevis is my aunt's craftsmanship." Okay, broth, there must be broth," and Eileen agreed. Greet asked for this and that just like she did when she was a child, but it made her relax, and the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes relaxed with a smile. "You sit at home, I'll buy some bones dash. Bernard, you go shopping with Aunt Eileen." Greet took out a small purse and put it directly into the barbarian's hand. "Aunt Eileen, ask him to help you carry things. Bernard eats a lot. If he doesn't go, you can't carry it alone. I'll go to the hospital and take care of APA. Aunt, please wait. Me. I'll be back for dinner tonight." He took Cyrilla, who rode Appa, who had shrunk by more than half, and ran directly to the hospital. "Leave Appa to the priests of the god of nature and ask them to take him into the wild and let him run around. Well, by the way, I can help you send a message to the teacher and make an appointment. It would be too much trouble for him to find the teacher by himself. Although Heartland City is small, it has a radius of 100 miles, and there are dozens of scattered villages. Heartland City is not large, and it is only a dozen minutes away from Aunt Eileen's house to the hospital." Gretel entrusted Appa to Pastor Joanna, and simply sent Appa outside the city with her, watching him run away happily. "Appa, have fun. I'll come out of town to find you when I'm done." The silver moon deer roared loudly, and the smoke and dust billowed, disappearing in an instant. The falcon raised by Joanna spread its wings and hovered lightly above its head, constantly using its calls to guide it in the direction. After a moment, he tightened his wings again, swooped down, and landed on its horn. The animal companions of the priest of the god of nature naturally have the ability to communicate, and it seems that the communication between the priest and the animals is smoother. Joanna and Greet stood side by side, watching them disappear into the forest. Then, the female priest half turned around, with red marks on her face, and slapped Greet hard on the shoulder. "Little guy, you still know how to come back. You have been missing this treatment center for several years, and we have been looking after it for you. Tell me, what have you done in these years? When will you come to give lectures again? Sister Joanna." Greet screamed, and her whole body was tilted halfway by her. He had no choice but to apologize with a smile. "Come as soon as I finish settling in. I just came back today. I always go to Aunt Eileen's house for dinner. I have to pay a visit to the teacher and the bishop, and then I will come back. I must come back." Unfortunately, Gretel was unable to eat the dinner at Aunt Eileen's house. When he returned, the door of Aunt Eileen's house was already crowded. There were 2 full rows of guards, and 2 knights stood on the left and right outside the door of the hut. When they saw him, his eyes lit up and he walked over quickly. "Mage Nordmark, under the orders of the city lord's palace, we invite you to the banquet." Aunt Eileen hugged her daughter, and Uncle Karen stood with his 2 sons beside him, their smiles a little forced. At the entrance of the alley not far away, the passage that could barely accommodate 2 horses walking side by side was completely occupied by a luxurious carriage with gold embedded in the wall. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today I recommend the Master Druid of Hogwarts. Look good, look good, look good. The protagonist is that little cat, so cute. It's so cute that it's rolling around. Meow.